What's up? Welcome to another episode of Goblin Town Reviews, where this week we've got Cryptopsy, None So Vile, 1996.
No.
So this is an album that was introduced to me. You know what? I can't remember. I've known about this thing for about 10 years or so. I think I was going through the internet just like, let me find the most extreme music I can find. And this was one of the albums that was recommended to me. And I first listened to it, I loved it, but I didn't really return back to it a lot and listen to it a lot. So this is the first time I've really had time to sit with it. And it's one of my brother Sean's favorite records. And he's put it on my mind in the last year several times and talked about it with me. So the last few reviews, we've done various records. And Brandon was talking about how he wanted something brutal, so I thought this one would be perfect for that.
Yeah.
And so we delved into it this week, and we're going to give you our thoughts about it.
Yeah. Yeah. I was excited. I was like, I don't know, I was hoping, well, I was wondering if it would be off-putting at all. Like, if it would still be, I don't know, be too much. Because I'm still not convinced that I'm, fully ready for that shit. But no, I guess, I don't know, but I enjoyed this. I was able to make sense of it, I guess, in my brain. I was registering the sounds I heard.
The thing is it helps, I think it helps to really put this thing into context because it came out in 96, and we had a lot of death metal in the 90s. You know, we had, especially early 90s, late 80s, you have bands like Death, Obituary, Cannibal Corpse, and just various bands that if you follow this channel you're probably familiar with. But for 1996, to me, this is one of the most kind of extreme death metal albums that really kind of makes your head spin with just how abrasive and rough and fast it is.
Did you say it was technical, kind of? Technical death
it's
metal?
considered tech death, but it doesn't sound like it, though. A lot of the tech death we have nowadays is more in the mold of an Obscura or a Necrophagist. It's very polished and clean guitar sounds, and it's pretty progressive, and it's more noodly, and it's very intricate, very complicated, but also very high fidelity music. And a lot of people complain that it's too clean. They don't like that sound. They don't like it sounding like it's been heavily edited and compressed in a studio and all that stuff. Like Fantano, he complains. He says it doesn't even sound like a real band. I want my death metal to sound like a real band is playing, like humans are playing those instruments, not computers, which I get, but I'm a fan of both, actually. I'm a fan of the new stuff. I'm a fan of the older stuff.
If it actually sounds like a computer, I'm impressed. A person mimicked that technically.
The thing is you could listen to an LP and have that criticism. Until you see the band live, you don't really know.
Yeah.
If they can pull it off live, then hats off to them.
Right, I mean, doing all the effects and stuff, Rings of Saturn, I guess, comes to mind. I mean, I don't have experience, but, they pull off, the alien noises live.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just, layers and stuff, but...
Well, I remember seeing Necrophagist back in 2007 for the Summer Slaughter Tour, and Muhammad Susamez, the lead guitar player, and the other guitar player, Christian Munzer, they nailed every scale, every lick, every solo, so they were actually able to play what they set down in the studio. So, I mean, if they can play it, then you can't complain that it sounds like a computer, because it's obviously not. It is a human being, and that's what we get from criticism laid at modern bands like Archspire.
Yeah.
People say it's so heavily edited and so groomed in the studio, it's not real metal anymore. It's some kind of strange digital, I don't even know what you want to call it, like wankery almost. And I don't like when people say stuff like that. I think it's closed-minded. So
yeah, I don't know. I guess people come from the DIY background. So I don't know. I haven't had a lot of time of really considering the perspective of just like really only having the DIY and then being experienced to this clean stuff.
Yeah.
And I don't know. It's like, do you think you're better than me? Like, is that how they feel? Like
Yeah.
something like that.
But this album, I guess the reason I went on that tangent is just to say this album, as far as tech death standards go, this is
Pretty
you can
raw.
tell it's from an earlier time period because it's pretty raw.
Yeah.
It's pretty gruff. Those guitar tones are pretty thick and bassy.
Yeah.
You know, and it sounds like death metal. It doesn't sound like this hyper clean, you know, display of
those people
technical prowess. Anyway.
I think those people would like this. Yeah, but the I mean, I don't know anything about mixing, but I would say the mix is good, just because I could hear everything, like throughout the whole album. I had headphones on. I was able to do headphones with this one, and I didn't have to try too hard to like really listen in and make out all the parts. Everything stuck out. It didn't get muddled, even though like I think they tuned down to B on this, which
I'm not sure. Yeah, but I wouldn't be surprised.
Like pretty crazy for '96. It's like a 7-string guitar now.
But this album has an excellent. I want to dig into just a few of the tracks here. The first thing is that Crown of Horns is like a great opener for this album. That might be, to me, like Crown of Horns and Graves of the Fathers are like my two favorites so far. And as I listen to it, I'm sure I'll have more, but yeah. Crown of Horns just starts out so insane with that opening scream and the blast beats, you know?
Yeah.
And then I wrote down in my notes while we were listening to it, I was like, this is going a million miles an hour. And the vocals are just totally unhinged. You know, the guy is not laying down traditional cadences when he's delivering his lines. He sounds like he's pretty much just barking. Yeah. You know, which is crazy. A crazy listening experience.
It was like the second time through, I was like looking at the lyrics, trying to follow along. And the first time, I was like, the syllables aren't matching up here. But I was able to make it out a little bit. But I was like...
I'll put it this way. Like, when you want to turn somebody on to harsh vocals, who's not really into it right now, you might show them something by Opeth and say, hey, man, listen to these vocals. And they'll be like, oh, you know, that doesn't sound too bad. Yeah. If they're open to it, they'll be like, oh, it doesn't sound that bad. Yeah. But, like, these vocals are like every one of those individuals' like worst nightmare. This is what they imagine it's going to be like.
Yeah, like all parts of it. I like how gritty it is. I mean, like, that fits super well. But like the delivery of the lyrics and like the diction, I think I personally, I'm like, you can still be brutal and get it across, and I feel like we've seen that more lately, so maybe it just wasn't as much of a thing as it at the time. Or maybe it's a choice to just sound like a caveman, because that is like...
I think they were literally trying to come up with the most extreme thing they could.
Yeah, I mean, that makes sense. I think I personally would prefer if I can make out the lyrics a little better. Like, I want to know, if I know what the words are, I want to be, like, able to placebo myself into being like, yeah, no, I can clearly hear what he's saying. But even with this, I'd be like, wait, which part? What did he just say?
Yeah. And, you know... We talk about this, but an underrated guy when it comes to that, just as far as his timing as a vocalist, I felt like was Chuck from Death. Yeah. You know, he had not the most appealing voice, but the timing was there. Yeah. And, you know, he never felt like he was off time or off beat with the way he delivered his lines. And that actually can go pretty far with people. No, yeah. That makes the lyrics a little bit more intelligible. And then you can try to pick out words from listening to it and try to slowly piece together what he's saying. Right. Just based on how it's being delivered. I think I agree with your with what you said on this one. It's really hard to do that with this record.
But like, and I don't know, you saying that, I'm like comparing, like Spirit Crusher comes to my mind. Like, it comes, dude, it from the depths. I don't know, it just has like that, like, consistent whatever. And it goes good with the music. It complements it, but here I think whenever he's like, and it's like, I don't know, like I'm like, but it fits. I don't know, it ties together really well. Well, and like, I mean, I'm impressed by what I heard, like Benedictine Convulsions at the end of that one. That's the one where he like I don't know, it's like a 20-second, like, deep, like, garbage disposal growl. And there's, like, a part where he, like, shifts lower, and it's in a way where he's like, oh, and it's like he's running out of breath almost, like you think. He's like, oh, and you think it'd fade off. And then he, like, keeps it going.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh, my God.
That was right around when we hit Benedictine Convulsions was when I started to really catch on to the formula that I felt like they were using.
Mm-hmm.
Like, we talked about it a little bit, but it seemed like each song would start out really frantically with like this explosion of ferocity.
Mm-hmm.
And there'd be just blast beats galore and growling and hard riffage, or tremolo picking, and then they'd go into like the groove, and the drums would slow down, and they'd lock you into a nice groove with like a heavy ass riff, and then there would be a solo. You know, they'd come in with a solo, and the solo was usually pretty cool, and then they would end.
The solos.
Then by the time the solo was over, they'd be figuring out a way to wrap up the song.
Yeah.
Now, each song was about 3.5 to 4 minutes. So, yeah, it kind of felt like they were mulching over the same formula again and again and again, which is like something that's not a huge sin in my book. A lot of great bands have their formulas they like to stick to. But, yeah, that was just something I noticed as I started really listening to the album. And I don't think I would like it as much if I didn't really enjoy a lot of those riffs.
Yeah.
Like, some of those riffs, like I said, I really locked into this album. After we listened to it, I went home, I laid down for a nap, and then I got up. And some of these riffs were just stuck in my head, and I was like bobbing my head, and I had to go listen to the songs again, you know, to really like, to get that earworm out of my brain.
Yeah.
You know, and I just think there are a lot of great grooves on this thing. It is extreme, but the more you kind of listen to it and peel back the layers of what's actually happening, there are a lot of catchy, sticky melodies in there amidst all of the chaos.
I mean, Benedictine Convulsions, again, to bring on, I guess that's one of my favorites. The slide, like the guitar was doing like the slide riff. I can't think of how it goes off the top of my head, but it's groovy and it's catchy. I think that's a good example.
Yeah, and then the song "Graves of the Fathers."
That had like the
one of
one,
the
two, three,
catchiest riffs on it on the whole record. It's just like,
was that like did that have like the
yes,
yeah, okay.
That one I loved, and the drummer, man, let's talk about him for a second.
Yeah.
He had a lot of great fills, and he was
like
going a million miles an hour. And my brother actually, I think he had some live Cryptopsy, or maybe that was Suffocation, but I think he had a live Cryptopsy CD that he gave me, and yeah, that drummer is actually a great, like, really good drummer. Especially the live recording that I listened to. It seems like the music is really frantic and chaotic. But if you pay attention to what he's doing, it's like he's doing so many things. You know, he's hitting the cymbals and the snare and doing the double kick all at the same time. And he's changing up tempos and time signatures all over the place.
Yeah.
And it gives, I think that's part of where the technicality of the music comes in. Yeah. Not necessarily always the noodly guitar playing and the really complicated riffs, but that rhythm section is just like absurd, man. It's constantly, as a listener, you're on your toes.
Yeah.
And if Sean ends up watching this video, if I can figure out that live Cryptopsy, because I don't think I have the CD anymore, but if I can find that, maybe I'll show some of that to you, and you'll appreciate what he's doing a little bit more.
Yeah, I like the cymbals on Crown of Horns. That was like one of the highlights. Like the beginning of the album. I feel like that song, I don't know, just did a good job of introducing the sounds we'd be hearing.
Yeah.
Kind of, I don't know. I don't even know what to say. I just like the ping ting ting ting.
Well, that's the thing is that mix is so dense and so heavy that when those cymbal hits really break through that noise and really strike you as a listener. And something about like one band that does a really great job of this is the band Psychroptic. They're from I think they're from Tasmania or like Southern Australia or something.
Oh.
They're a tech death band that's like legendary, that's been around for a long time, like 20 years.
Mm-hmm.
And they the way their albums are produced and mixed, you can really hear those cymbals ringing out in the midst of all this chaotic death metal.
Mm-hmm.
And there's something about that clashing of different frequencies and those sounds that just makes it sound so primal and raw, and like,
I mean,
you know, like
yeah.
like you're sitting in your garage listening to these guys play. You know?
Yeah, well, I'm thinking about Death again. At the end of Symbolic,
Yeah.
whenever it's like the drums are like, but then he goes.
Yeah.
You get
Gene
the
Hoglan's beating the shit out of those cymbals.
So like,
man.
yeah, and this one just like, no, it's good.
I wish I knew the drummer's name. We probably should have did some research to figure out who is the drummer for Cryptopsy, but
Yeah. Well, I need better research in general. I don't. I'm like, we're about to shoot the video. I'm like, wait, what year did this come out again?
yeah.
Gosh. What else to talk about? The bass. I liked the bass. I mean, I could hear the bass in the mix, and I liked when they highlighted it. I liked the room that they left for every instrument just throughout the
Yeah.
album. I mean, the vocals, the guitars, the bass, the drums, they all had a moment to like really shine and like catch your attention. I mean, Mudvayne got their song inspiration from Slit Your Guts, the because
Yeah.
I mean, my brain went, oh, it's the Mudvayne thing, and then I was like, shut the fuck up. I was like,
Cryptopsy was first.
yeah, because I don't even know the name of that song. What's the Mudvayne song?
Dig.
Dig.
Dig is what it's called, yeah.
Yeah.
Have you ever imagine being in a band like Mudvayne, who's like this commercially successful like new metal band,
Yeah.
and you're like in your private time you're listening to shit like this,
Yeah.
and then you go in the studio and you're like, guys, check out this idea. Bam, bam. And your bandmates are like, that's really cool, dude, let's run with that. Yeah. Like, but you'd have to feel a little bit ashamed, wouldn't you? You'd be like, man, this isn't really
No,
like, this
because
new metal is not really where I'm at musically in my life right now. Like, I'd rather be playing death metal.
Yeah. You're like, check out this fucking riff, and then you're like,
Yeah.
oh, man, I wish there was more of this. And
You're like, man, but I'm in this cheesy new metal band. You know, like, with our luck on this channel, we're probably going to get like 10 million Mudvayne fans are going to storm this video and hurl snowballs at us. That's probably going to happen.
I don't even know enough. Other than, I guess, the internet stigma of them. I try not to shit on stuff too much.
But you know what I thought of, man, when I was
don't
listening to
shit
this
on
too?
stuff, honestly.
I thought that it's amazing that this and Tool's Anima album came out the same year. I don't know what else was popular in 1996. I'm not as familiar with that year in general. Like, I don't know what other records dropped that year. But it's just cool that, like, you know, you had the more, I guess 1996 would have been more when new metal was starting to form a little bit, because this was after grunge was over. But yeah, it's just it's kind of a mind fuck thinking that, like, because what if you listen to Anima is a lot more, it's still progressive, but it's a lot more commercial and a lot more conventional sounding, whereas this is on the extreme end.
Yeah.
So I'm sure you had metalheads back in '96 that were like our age, that were listening to both of those records at the same time, and I'm sure they were scratching itches, but in different ways, totally different ways.
Yeah.
So it's just, you know, I kind of like to transport myself back to a time and a place when music was being made, and think about like what would I have been listening to back then. You know, because I was 6 years old in 1996. I didn't know what was going on. You know, but if I would have been like 24,
right,
in 1996,
right, if you were your
I
age
probably
then.
would have been listening to this and like, you know, Tool, and been like a happy camper. You know, been like really happy, because that was, you know, that's an awesome There must have been what I'm saying is there must have been a lot of awesome albums that dropped that year. There must have been.
Mm-hmm.
You know, for these two both to have come out that year, that's insane.
Yeah.
But anyway, is there anything more you want to say about this record?
Oh, I don't know if we touched on the groove. It's groovy. I don't know. It's got a lot of good. I like the dum ding dum 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 ding dum 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 dum. I like that those kind of groovy riffs, and they popped up a little bit, and especially after like the blast beats, and then you just come in with the chords, and you're just like dum 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 dum.
Yeah,
yeah,
at
those
first,
chords.
once because you kind of have to get past the extremity of it, right?
Yeah.
Then once you get past that, you can really lock into some of the grooves on here, and it is groovy, man. And I think that's one of its strongest points.
And something I noticed from the solos was most of my experience, I guess, at least up until a certain point. I mean, now I listen to more, but my only experience with metal was from Clone Hero, because just a lot of the songs people have charted for that game are like extreme metal stuff. And a lot of those solos, I mean, I'm playing the game, right? So the solos come on and they're like ridiculous, and I'm like, this is fucking stupid. Like, who would write this? But also like a part of that was because like they really are like really like woo, like I don't know, not nonsensical, but just like really like attacking you with notes and stuff.
Like an avalanche of notes.
And I mean, and like in the chaos, and it makes sense with the music, but here I think they kept the chaos, but like the solos were like, I don't know, they were good. They were like intelligible, and like, I don't know, it was like very crazy. But then, I don't know, he would just like hold out a note for like just a second, just like one note for a second that would make me be like, I'd stick with that. And then I don't know, he broke it up well. And I don't remember the song. It might have been one of the longer solos on the whole album, I feel like. But it just kept progressing. And I was impressed that it was able to be as long as it was in the context of this music. Because I feel like those things are just like blazing. Like they just rip out in like fucking like 10, 15 seconds. But this one like continued. It was a whole like half minute or something.
Yeah. Well, I thought the solos were pretty tasteful. You know, I don't think they were too self-indulgent.
No.
And I truthfully don't think they were a big aspect of the music. I don't think.
No, I think they were good, like, flourish. Maybe more than that, but...
I think they're cool, but I don't think that Cryptopsy was trying to write one of those types of records.
No.
Where it was kind of like real progressive and noodly and, you know...
Yeah, no, it was like...
Like all these other tech death bands... where you're just like it's just arpeggios and you know all these crazy scales and all this stuff, all this tapping and whatnot.
I also like
all
that's
this fancy guitar work.
Though
like
they're
I think,
able to do all that now.
I think this was if you want to call this technical death metal, I think this is like as brutal as it's ever gonna get. Like the direction that tech death is going in nowadays. It doesn't sound like this anymore, and we've already talked about that. But
it's like I think it's the rawness of it. Right?
It is, yeah.
Well, because you say that, and I think like Archspire.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I feel like their shit's heavy. I haven't listened to it as much in a minute, or like it was like a couple months ago, but I remember the heaviness, but I guess I don't know, I'm feeling like, I don't know, I guess I can see like the difference in just the brutality of like the more raw, kind of like not as clean sound.
Yeah.
Coming from it that makes it heavier. I mean that's really, this is heavier. No, this is heavier.
Yeah, well, I think back in those days, this kind of fits snugly where it is. I mean, there's a big influence from 90s death metal on this thing.
Yeah.
But it's still pretty forward-thinking in the sense of pushing the envelope as far as the extreme elements of the music. You know, we've already touched on the vocals and the drumming and the wall of distorted down-tuned guitar and all the chaos, how chaotic the music can be and all that stuff. I think a lot of bands took those concepts and ran with them in the later decades, you know. And in 1996, I think you'd be hard-pressed to find an album as brutal as this, you know, that was around in those days. So I think it's definitely a forward-thinking album, but you can definitely also you can sense if you listen to 90s death metal, like the early stuff, you can definitely see how that sort of led into this,
Mm-hmm.
you know?
Yeah. The album cover. Was that a big deal? I thought that's pretty provocative.
It is provocative. I don't know if can't imagine like what the response was like back then when people saw that. But
Yeah, I mean, were they just like not? I feel like I feel like I should know about it. Like given the like I'm not it's not a whole lot, but given the small amount of metal history that I know, I feel like I would have heard like, oh yeah, like Cannibal Corpse. They got big off of shit like that, and I don't know the fact that it was
Cannibal
like
Corpse, they're like the kings
Christ.
of they're like the kings of provocative album covers. They've got like some really wicked stuff. That you're right.
Oh,
that's
yeah.
kind of how that's part of how they made their name, as being as gruesome and brutal as possible.
Maybe this was past that since it was like the second half of the 90s.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I think this was definitely like, because Tomb of the Mutilated, I want to say that was an early 90s release.
Right.
And I'm not a big Cannibal Corpse guy. So I'm more of a Napalm Death guy. But I from what I understand, they were definitely part of that early 90s like death metal push. And they made their name off of being, back then you just wanted to be like a horror movie, right?
Yeah.
You want it to be as gruesome and as bloodlusting and as like disgustingly horrific as possible. Mm-hmm. And that's how bands like Cannibal Corpse made their name, was off being this like scary band, right?
Right.
This kind of shock value band.
Yeah.
So I do find a little bit of that in this record, especially with the album cover and the way it sounds. They're definitely trying to be like, man, this is some heavy shit right here, man. This is like brutal. This is intense. Like they're going for that. Like, unabashedly going for it. Mm-hmm. And I think they nailed it, man, because people are still talking about this record even to this day. So
yeah, I guess I didn't get to look at the lyrics the most, but I'm curious if maybe they were able to refine it a little bit more, so that it was less about just being purely shocking and actually just like I don't know. I don't know what their intentions with the lyrics were. I'd be interested to find out.
Well, you may be interested to know that the other album I've listened to by Cryptopsy, and I'm sure they've got others I haven't heard, but the other one my brother introduced me to was Whisper Supremacy. Oh. And that one came out after this one. Mm-hmm. And that one actually sounds a lot better produced. Like, after you hear that one, and then you go back and listen to this one again, it'll sound like this one's coming at you through, like, a glass tube. Like, everything's super compressed. And when you listen to Whisper Supremacy, it's all open. Yeah. And you listen to it on, like, headphones, and it literally sounds like they're playing, like, right in front of you. Okay. But I don't know if I like the riffs as much on Whisper Supremacy as I like on this album, so I just think, at that time, 1996, the production on this album, for what it is, I think it's pretty good. I just think they were limited by the technology of the time, to try to get all these different sounds to coalesce together into something that made sense. Mm-hmm. But you could still, as a listener, go in and pick out details and hear that snare drum, hear the bass, hear the cymbals and the guitar notes and all that stuff. Hear it clearly amidst all the chaos and the brutality. I think it was a challenge back then. Yeah. For producers to really dial up that perfect balance of sound.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. Okay. I think I got all my thoughts.
Yeah, I think we've gone on long enough.
One more thing. Actually, I have another.
So how do you think this compares to Green Day's early work? Do you think they're on par with each other?
I think they have a little bit to go if they want to be as heavy as Green Day. Yeah. Who has more album sales?
Oh,
like that matters.
Wouldn't it be great if Cryptopsy was like the #1 selling artist in like the Marshall Islands or somewhere?
I mean, that's like
some really small island in the Pacific.
I mean, that's what Metalocalypse is, right? It's like what if a death metal band was that big? I like Green Day, by the way. So
I do too. I like Green
Day. No, I'm not cringe.
But yeah, thanks guys
for watching.
Yeah, thanks for stopping by and watching another episode of Goblin Town Reviews. Let us know what albums you want to see reviewed or what songs you'd like to have reacted to on the channel. And because we are now doing song reactions too.
Mm-hmm.
And like, comment, subscribe.
Mm-hmm.
Let us know what you thought of the video. Did you think we did a good job covering this album, or would you like to hear more detail? Or
yeah, give us constructive criticism. I mean, we're just kind of spitballing here.
just comment something. Just comment something. If you watch this. Anything. Yeah.
Yeah. No.
Anyway,
Thanks for watching.
Thanks for watching, guys. Bye.
Bye.